Yacht Club at Virgin Gorda in the British Virgin Islands. The Bitter End is a sailing resort. Trade winds, clear warm seas, and friendly skies. There are many flights every day from St. Thomas or San Juan to Virgin Gorda. Our club launch will pick you up. Our guest rooms and cottages are scattered along a hillside. Each room has a gallery overlooking the sound. The decor is island style, but the comfort is modern. Overlook from your room the excellent anchorage of Gorda Sound. Enjoy our good buffet and drinks, or enjoy all kinds of water sports and many other things to do. If you're interested in windsurfing or spinnaker flying, the Bitter End is the right place for you. Feed our friendly tropical birds, or picnic on a lonesome beach, or watch from a cool, shady place scuba diving lessons given by famous professional diving guides. The Bitter End offers the free use of their boats if you are a registered guest. Our sailing master will be happy to coach the less experienced sailor or beginner. No matter how long you have been sailing, your skills are bound to be sharpened at the Bitter End.
All right, everybody. I've always enjoyed pufferfish. What about you guys? Welcome to Inside Sailing. I'm Peter Eisler here at the Eisler Sailing headquarters in San Diego. You know, yesterday I went on a boat for the first time since lockdown. I know I'm a little bit behind the curve, but I'm just being careful, being in that high-risk group. That as it is, I was paddleboarding. It was a great time. I am really pleased to be here with you guys, and thank you for coming in. This series, which we've been doing with the ASA, has been really a lot of fun for me, and probably the most fun is picking the topics we get to feature. And this one here is near and dear to my house. You know, when you go to like a psychologist, or I don't know if you've ever been to, you know, Lamaze training or something, where they tell you to picture someplace in your mind, close your eyes, and picture someplace where you're perfectly happy, your comfort place in life. Well, the place we're going to today, at least virtually on the show, is the place that I picture when I picture my favorite place. So without further ado, let me share my screen and share a few personal thoughts and fun that I've had at the Bitter End Yacht Club in Virgin Gorda. So let's orient ourselves. We're on the globe right here, and we zoom in all the way into the Caribbean. In the upper Caribbean, east of San Juan, is the Virgin Islands, U.S. Virgins. Then further east is the British Virgin Islands. Let's pick a better chart. And there we see the big Virgin Gorda, 421 probably meters high, and zoom in a little bit more, and we can see the windward corner of Gorda Sound, of North Sound, and the Bitter End Yacht Club on the leeward side of Virgin Gorda's little peninsula there, perfectly protected from the trade winds, which blow like crazy out of the east most of the time. And that is the Bitter End. For me personally, it's been a place where I have just had so much fun on the water in the tropics with my family. My daughters, much younger than, love to tube. You know what tubing is? Well, at the Bitter End, I figured out it's windy enough that you can take out the getaway single-handed the Hobie catamaran and pull out the tube and take the girls tubing behind the sailboat. It's almost like when I went water skiing behind my friend's seaplane. And the Bitter End's where my daughters first got their taste of racing. There's Marley in the back aft and Megan in the middle, and her mom driving, the cosmic warlord. Bitter End just, it meant so much to me and my family. Went down every year. There's daughter Marley, who now is a kiteboarder learning to windsurf with her mom. And that's, to me, my favorite memories of the Bitter End are the family activities and all the other sailor families that would come down and be part of it. And this is my favorite place in the Bitter End, or back V1 Bitter End, prior to Mother Nature coming in and deciding things needed to change. The sailing center with all these great toys. You just walk up, grab windsurfer sails, get the right sail, take the kids out on the Hobie Cat, grab the tube. And then more recently, I was really into windsurfing there for a long time, high-speed windsurfing. You can see the water there. It's just perfectly flat. That's sort of the windward side of the Bitter End, but it's protected by a reef, so there's no ocean swell at all, and just great shredding conditions. And more recently, one of my favorite views, just in my room, looking out, going and hanging out, grabbing the car and sitting on the guitar and sitting on the hammock and watching life go by. It's just a beautiful place. Right around the corner there is where my daughter and Russell Coots, that'd be Sir Russell Coots to you, the guy who has won several America's Cups, set the record for the farthest launch inshore on a Hobie wave into land, coming in at high speed on a beam reach. They set the record for the farthest that they implanted in. I think it was right around that third palm tree to the right there. And one of my favorite things to do at the Bitter End was to wake up early in the morning and try to clear my head and go up, and just beautiful granite boulders. There's an incredible trail, and then look down at the anchorage, which cruising sailors have known about for decades. And a lot of my favorite snorkeling and underwater activities took place there. I know a lot of the reefs that have been shown them by a lot of the family, and there's a good friend, and we're out checking out the coral. There's just so much to do. It's the ultimate water sports vacation place, and whoops, how did that get in there? Well, there was a young sailor who was at Yale University from Connecticut. That's me with the plaid shirt on the left of the screen, part of the Yale team that won the Nationals way back when. And thanks to some connections and being identified as a good local sailor, I got invited to sail on a really cool racing program, my first big boat racing program. And it really set the stage for everything that I did in big boat racing and America's Cup after that. And it was a boat called Love Machine. In fact, there were a series of Love Machines. And there's a picture of the good old days of ocean racing. And I signed on board the Love Machine team. And for a number of years, I sailed with Richard Hokin, who was the owner and skipper of the boat, and his racing team. And we got to be pretty darn good. In fact, so good that we got recognized by people like Dennis Conner, and it set the stage for my further career. There's an earlier picture of yours truly, and John Glenn there to the left, and Richard Hokin, my good friend, whose family has owned the Bitter End for a long time. And the Hokins have been big supporters of sailing and what they've done providing the Bitter End and keeping it real for sailors has been very important to me, my family, and the sailing community. And one of the things I would go down every year. One of the things Richard did is he asked me to design the first Learn to Sail program at the Bitter End. That was quid pro quo for him and the Bitter End helping out with an Olympic campaign that I headed into straight out of college. And we continued going down after that. And every year there was the Pro-Am Regatta right around Halloween. And there's the late Tom Blackaller on the right and the young me chatting with him, and a great chance to meet, and not just meet, but hang out with for a week or two, some of the best sailors in the world. And a lot of families have come through the Bitter End thanks to the Pro-Am Regatta. I love the Bitter End so much. Can you tell that in my latest book that just came out last year, Let's Go Sailing, I got a picture from the Bitter End. There's the launching spot of Water Sports V1 on the cover. It's just a fantastic place. And you can just hold your breath and enjoy it all. So without further ado, I would like to introduce to you and welcome on board Inside Sailing my good friends, Lauren Hokin and her dad, Richard Hokin, the owners of the Bitter End. Hey, guys.
Thanks. Thanks, Pedro.
You got it.
I mean, your introduction was so good that I don't know what we can add to it.
Wait, I have one thing I want to add quickly. I think you mentioned that Russell Coots has the land speed record for a Hobie wave or getaway, but I think my dad and one of his best friends, a former Commodore of our local club, I think, has the reef speed record for a getaway. So
No, what we crashed. We actually folded up the front end of a getaway.
everybody's got to do it once.
Yeah, I think Dr. Crash should just reside down there and take pictures, and why go anywhere else? And Lauren, you had the good fortune. I mean, talk about a lucky girl. You basically grew up at and around the Bitter End from day one.
From in utero. Yes, I am very, very fortunate. Actually, my siblings, I'm the youngest of four, and cousins have really been very, very fortunate to get to spend a lot of our lives in this spectacularly beautiful and magical place. And we're actually now in the fourth generation of Hokins that have gotten to grow up and get to know the sea and the fantastic place in the ecosystem that is, Bitter End. So it's I'm very thankful for that. And when you talked about Bitter End being your happy place, it made me laugh, because every time I'm sitting in the dentist chair, that's the first thing, I just go there.
Don't tell me about it. I have to do that tomorrow. But okay, so let's get into it. We have a great show for you, and that the Bitter End team. And let's just first qualify, Richard, you and Lauren are both across the continent at home in Connecticut right now, not at the Bitter End.
That is correct. We're both in Connecticut on or near Long Island Sound.
But we're going to learn why now. So I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen, and we're off.
Okay,
This is a little bit of an aerial higher up than the one I took when on the hike.
Yeah, that's I guess probably in the early to mid 70s, a few years after we bought the place. And you can see one of the great features there is Sabre Rock, which over the last 40 years has grown. I guess the geology guys should be really looking carefully at that, because it's one of the few geological phenomena that we've observed over the period that we've been there. But this was a place that my family and I went to before there was anything there. We in 1964, my mom and dad decided they were kind of tired of going to Florida in the winter, and somebody had tipped us off about the Virgin Islands, and we went down there for the summer and checked it out, spent a week in Virgin Gorda. There was nothing in North Sound at the time. My dad and mom really weren't sailors, but they chartered a boat about the second year that they bought a place in St. Thomas, and they got talked into by my aunt and her husband into chartering a boat. And they had such a good time. Within 6 weeks, my dad had gone down to Grenada and bought this boat, this ketch, built in Scotland in the late 30s. It has a very notorious history, but I won't go into that now. And my mom and dad spent a lot of time cruising in the Eastern Caribbean, and they had a home in St. Thomas, so their sort of weekend jaunts and stuff like that were around the BVI, and they and the greatest anchorage, we'd known that for a while, was where Bitter End is today. And they went probably once a month to North Sound, and I think one of the times they got there, they saw that some guy was building something there, and that was the origin of Bitter End. It was started by a guy named Basil Simonet, who was he was from the Bahamas originally. His dad was the last premier of the Bahamas before independence. So he was down there as a charter captain, and he basically decided it would be a great hangout for yachtsmen, and he started it. And my mom and dad got to know him pretty well. And one night they were having drinks with him, and my mom asked if she could buy or lease one of his 30 acres. And he said, no, but I'll think about it. And the next time they came back, he said, why, you can't have 30 acres, but how would you like the whole place? And when I heard that, I went berserk, and my dad and my brother and I formed a partnership, and we bought the place.
Wow, what year was that?
That was we started negotiating in 1970, took 3 years of very convoluted negotiations, and we closed the deal in 1973.
Initially, the seller wanted to be paid in gold bullion, which wasn't really feasible.
You couldn't just find some on the property? I mean, what isn't the lure of all the pirates? That's like such a great place to hang out.
Well, we've looked.
Yeah.
I mean, we've gone through a couple of backhoes digging around, and we have not found a thing. But a few years ago, it was featured in Bitter End was featured in the I think one of the British newspapers as the sort of the focal point of where all this hot money was going. I still haven't found any of that either.
So was it called, did Simonet call it the Bitter End?
Yeah, we didn't name it. Basil named it, and he was a kind of an eccentric guy, but he knew what he wanted, and he was a charter skipper, so this was really a hangout for his crowd, and it was before bareboat sailing. So I think when he saw bareboat sailing on the horizon, and he didn't like the idea of crowds coming, so that's probably why he sold it to us.
There's an early windsurfer there. Looks like a boom.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that story. Windsurfing had just started up about the time that we bought Bitter End. So I ordered 3 or 4 windsurfers, and they got shipped down in big corrugated boxes. So I unpacked one and figured out how to rig it. And I went out and got on the thing, and I fell off it 100 times in one afternoon. My knees were bleeding from climbing back onto the non-skid. And finally, about 6 o'clock in the evening, the trade winds kind of died down. I pulled up the sail, and it started sailing. And then I went back and I looked at the instructions. There were some mimeographed instructions that came in the box. It said, don't try to learn to sail this in over 5 knots of breeze.
So is that the Sunfish Worlds?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had the sun. What year was that? I think it was in the 90s. Does that sound right, Pedro?
Yeah, looks like all provided boats, and that's a good perspective of how big. It's like a giant. The harbor there, the Sound, is like a big inland lake. It's
I think that was the mid 90s, and that's one of the many cool things about the place is that for sailing, there's all kinds of different venues. So we've got this protected inland lake, but then you can, sail out and
it's the ultimate place for messing about in boats. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No question.
So that's probably our Sunday beer can racing before we got the Hobies.
Yep, special cut down Bitter End Yacht Club laser sails.
Yeah. No roach. No battens. So that's one of the things that was pretty cool about it was Sabre Rock, that little rock that I pointed out earlier belonged to the guy sitting on the right. His name was Bert Kilbride, and he was the dean of diving in the BVI. And so he had this little dive operation right across from us. His compressor was powered by a VW air-cooled engine that he started up at 6 o'clock every morning, which guaranteed that you got out of bed soon. And he was a great guy. And when he retired and sold his business, it moved from, and he sold Sabre Rock, it moved over to Bitter End. And today we have a really terrific diving program. The name has changed. It's called Sun Chaser Scuba. And it's just a wonderful thing. I mean, that kind of, it sort of gives you the sense, it's not just it's about anything in boats. It's about going out and sailing an Optimist if you're a kid, or a windsurfer or whatever, or it's about, going out and going and just in a dinghy and finding a deserted beach to go beach combing on. There's just it just goes on, and that was our motivation. That's my mom and dad, and the place was meant to be a family retreat, and it was really only because bareboating had started up about the same time we arrived that it just started to grow. So my mom and dad did all the work, and Wendy and I just showed up from time to time and had a lot of fun. And so did I think the whole rest of the family did too. But they did the heavy lifting on making Bitter End what it is. That's my brother. He was photographing it, so they never gave us any of the pictures.
Who's that?
That's Lauren and her brother Justin. That I guess they must have been out diving or something.
Back. We put them all back. That was one of my brother and I would get up early in the morning, and we would spend a lot of time hunting or going looking for things like geckos and lizards and crabs and conchs, and then we'd show them off and put them back. But that is still to this day, like one of the most magical parts of the place is that you can kind of set your kids free and they can explore nature and do it in a safe, pretty contained, controlled environment, but and also just learn a lot of skills. Like at probably like 6 or 7 learned how to operate an 11-foot whaler, which is probably a little early. That
was when you were learning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, the other thing that people should know is there's only one way there are 2 ways to get to Bitter End, or 3 ways maybe, but 90% of the people that have ever come to Bitter End have come in yachts. And there are no roads. You come by boat. If you want to, you can come by helicopter or seaplane, but it's a lot more fun coming by boat.
But Dad, so this is the boat that kind of built Bitter End, and
yeah, this was our family boat when we were in St. Thomas. She was built on a Maine lobster boat hull, and then we took her to Bitter End. The first trip I made to Bitter End, actually with Wendy, was in Reef Sampler after we bought the place. And then she became our freighter for hauling all the building materials from St. Thomas to Bitter End. And that at other times she would go out and do experimental fishing off the drop off off of Anegada, and we'd just hop in her and go over to Anegada for the day and do some diving or beach combing. And it's fun. I mean, there's just no question about it. And
so
if I had it to do over again, I'd definitely do it over again.
But just a quick note on her, because she's such a classic boat in so many ways. So she actually was our, for Hurricane Irma, she was our kind of get out of Dodge boat. So she was out on the mooring and she unfortunately sank. But we did, we floated her up with the help of our dive partner, Sun Chaser. And she is going to have another, she's going to be reinvented in a really cool way. So she's been a part of our history for almost 50 years, and she's going to join us for the next chapter. Just in a
to be continued.
Yeah. So this was our first real excursion boat, the Prince of Wales, and that's the captain Poncho, who was and is still a legend at Bitter End and beyond in Virgin Gorda. She was a fishing boat, Dad, from...
Yeah, in Chesapeake Bay. She sank, and Granddad was able to acquire the wreck for a few bucks, and probably spent a lot more bucks converting her into what she ended up being.
But she really was she was the workhorse for, she got made Bitter End, a real kind of like a place known for these adventures and excursions. So whether you went out to Horseshoe Reef on Anegada or to the Dog Islands or down to Jost Van Dyke, kind of, she took everybody all around the BVI. And that's that's an homage to sort of hopefully the sense of humor and the spirit of the place. One thing we never want to be is a place that takes itself too seriously. So I don't know if everyone can read that, but the sign says no hot pants or bathing suits allowed in the dining room. Please remove them before entering. Our policy actually is you do have to wear a shirt, but I think that Bitter End is really about, it's about not taking life too seriously.
About fun. It's fun. The fun factor is the key driver there.
Yeah, and you mentioned how you can just let the kids roam around the property, and you felt safe all day. Partly because all the guests feel so much like a family while they're there, but it's also the staff and credit to you guys, sort of the Virgin Gorda community, that the Bitter End employees is a big employer of that community, and the staff also felt like family. Like we ended up, we come down every year with the kids, and we became friends with, folks that were everybody from the chef to the, folks that were cleaning the rooms to water sports. They all knew Marley and Megan, and so you always like you had a big family there, and a lot of it has to do with the starts from the top down.
Well, we're a community there. That's a little I can try to explain that, but we used in when we were younger and more reckless, we would have a sort of house party for some of our friends down there at the beginning of the season, just to kind of a warm up for everybody at Bitter End who had been, we'd been closed down for hurricane season and all that stuff. So on one of these trips, we had a couple of guys, one guy who's holding up the sign, Jim Linville, and Andy Kostanecki, another well-known sailor, who were all belonged to Untitled Yacht Club with us. And they got it into their heads that there were about, I don't know how many people there were there, but they were going to come up with a boat that we could all sail around North Sound in. So they took a laser tube and two lasers and created an interesting trimaran, and it actually worked. And I think we may even have a video that shows some of that. But that was either before or after the voyage. I guess probably before. The thing probably didn't come back in one piece.
Classic. All right, so we go from historical to sort of the present day, or leading up to the with this the damage from the hurricane with this next video here.
So I think this is a video we just quickly that we, I think it's one we put together a few months after the hurricane to sort of remind ourselves of what a fun, awesome place Bitter End is, and it's sort of it really gets to the heart of the spirit of the place and the water sports focus and just the sense of adventure that everybody embraces while they're there. And the music is a local band, the Lashing Dogs. They're awesome.
Bring back the culture, bring back the culture, bring back the culture, I say. All for fathers left us a legacy, so we can celebrate and be free. Bring back our culture today. Let me hear you, bring back the culture, bring back the culture, bring back the culture, I say. All for fathers left us a legacy, so we can celebrate and be free. Bring back our culture today. Our ancestors toiled from day to day. Bright future for everyone. The world is made that is no more. They left for us a culture of which we were all proud. So bring back what we had before. Let me hear you. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture, I say. All for what left us a legacy. So we could celebrate and be free. Bring back our culture today. I said sing it out now. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture, I say. All the fathers left us a legacy. So we could celebrate and be free. Bring back our culture today. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture. Bring back the culture, I say.
Who's this?
That's our good friend and longtime director of water sports, Jerome Rand, and he's quite a character and a super interesting guy and very representative kind of the spirit of the place. Jerome just got back last year from a solo nonstop circumnavigation in a Westsail 32, which for those that aren't familiar with the Westsail, it's a little slow boat, but he really is the embodiment of the adventurer, and he's been with us leading our water sports crew on and off for, gosh, probably close to 15 years at this point. And he's just a phenomenal guy. And
so there, you get a good idea of this incredible saltwater inland lake, which probably averages 50, 60 feet deep. It's large ships could come in here. And it's really probably one of the few harbors like this in the world that doesn't have a bunch of oil storage tanks and gantry cranes around it. And it's just a magnificent spot.
so that's a cool image of kind of the heartbeat of the place, the village, where you can see the water sports and the restaurants, and kind of that's the hub of activity, really, the center of the property. And that's an overhead shot of our marina. You know, I think one of the things that makes us a little bit different from a lot of places in the Caribbean is that we're really kind of a village, and so while we have historically had a hotel, we also are very much a place that welcomes people that come by boat. Boats.
Well, 90% of the people who ever have come by in a yacht.
Yeah,
That's how all the people.
The place, yeah.
Yeah, and how many moorings do you have out front, and more people can anchor?
Yeah, we've got about 75 moorings. But Peter, did you tell me recently that you had a funny experience on the dock at a program regattas?
Imagine you had just been at one of those award ceremonies and had had too many lemon crashes and or rum punches or something, and you're sleeping on one of these boats here, tied up with your family because you have an early morning departure to go back to work, to home. And all of a sudden I heard some voices in the middle of the night, and I woke up and I look out, and my boat's no longer tied to the dock. It's drifting downwind. The Bitter End's on the windward side of the shore, so I'm out in the middle of the sound. My family all asleep. So I reached down to the key to turn on the engine, and of course there was no key there. It was all, you know, prankster going on. So in the middle of the night, like 2:30 a.m., I had to sail my Freedom 30 back to this dock here with my family oblivious, sleeping down below. And I fly it back up to the dock again. But these things happen at the Bitter End.
They do. They do. So I think this is probably, this is either a Sunday beer can racing, or this might be one of, you know, we host a lot of flotillas and rendezvous. Juno, Marine Max, Swan, Oyster, almost every year they bring big groups to us, and it's a lot of fun because we can offer a different experience. So we can offer like round the buoys racing for the participants. So yeah, it's a ton of fun. You know, our beer can racing can be just depending on the mix of the crowd, super serious. You get folks who want to like protest and stuff, and then most people are sort of like, I just want the beers and cheer and to watch the sunset. But it's, yeah, kind of one of our trademark things. And that's a shot of some real little guys learning how to sail on a Hobie wave. It's an awesome place to teach kids to sail and to all kinds of skills related to being at sea. So there's a kid in a laser being chased by one of our water sports crew in a whaler.
Yeah, that's the cool thing is that, you know, it evolved from the Peter Eisler Sailing School 101 to a full-on training program where, you know, Olympic level coaches desired, you know, send in applications. You guys had a great coaching staff down there. Who wouldn't want to spend a few months during the winter living at the Bitter End and teaching kids and adults and anybody how to sail or how to race better?
Totally. And now our fleet we had collegiate 420s and boats that were relevant to high school and college sailors. So actually it was awesome because kids would come with their families on spring break and they'd be able to train and practice while they're on vacation.
And we talked about the diving, and you know, it's just
windsurf is still a thing, you know, like there are a lot of people that still want to get out and windsurf. It's a ton of fun. You know, kiting's a big deal these days. We have probably one of the best venues at the risk of some, you know, in the Caribbean for like pro kiters, but also for learning to kite. It's really safe. We have an amazing launch venue. It's an awesome place, like whether you want to learn how to ride or whether you want to sit back and have like a rum punch in the afternoon and watch like folks getting massive air. It's all right there. It's pretty awesome. And then we also, this is sort of the après sailing. You know, we do all kinds of beach games, tug of war. We're gonna have remote control sailboat racing. It's about having fun, being spontaneous, not taking anything too seriously. That's my dad with one of my brother's kids. She looks pretty serious, but she has a great time down there.
Another generation.
Another generation, yeah.
Which?
And that's a lot of our family, not our whole family, but there's 3 generations. Yeah, 3 generations. So at night, we have this tradition of on there are a couple nights a week when there are a lot of charter boats in the anchorage. And so we have a big party, and part of the party, we have live music and limbo contests. And we've been doing that for decades and decades. And I have to say, Dad, I think I beat you that night, but you know,
yeah, but I think I beat you on handicap. You had to give me a few inches.
Yeah. We also have, you know, so we've been around for a long time, and another really cool thing about sort of the folks that come to Bitter End is they come generation after generation. And so we do, this is our extended family, but we have a lot of multi-gen visitors. And it's a place that is, you know, whether you want to learn how to kite and, you know, kind of like really.
But we have a number of families that were formed there, where a couple met up there, and so it's sort of a pyramid scheme, I guess.
But there's something for everybody to do, whether you want to do something like high impact or just hang out on the beach and beachcomb and watch the sunset. Like, it really is a place that is welcoming to everybody.
But then everything changed late summer 2017 when a Category 5 hurricane named Irma just took dead shot eye on the Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands. And I think, you know, one of the most heartbreaking, you know, the stories coming down, of course, Puerto Rico, you know, get hammered hard. It just swaths straight through. But some of the most heartbreaking video that we saw straight after this is what we're about to show you now.
Yeah, so the video that we're going to watch is from our good friends, Caribbean Buzz. They're a helicopter operator out of St. Thomas, and they took this video about 12 hours after the storm moved through. So, my dad and I were fortunate. We were able to coordinate and hook up with a fellow neighbor on Virgin Gorda who had his plane in Long Island. And they stripped out most of the seats in the plane, and we left about 36 hours after the storm and loaded up this plane with pallets of generators and food and baby formula and medical supplies, and flew down to Puerto Rico, because actually Puerto Rico was spared by Irma. She was hit really hard by Maria, but we flew into Ceiba, which was formerly Rosie Roads, a military Navy air station on Puerto Rico, and we were met by a bunch of our Puerto Rican friends and clientele. They'd organized to have 6 big sport fishing boats right there at the marina adjacent to the airport. And we loaded up these boats with, they'd been collecting supplies in Puerto Rico, and we loaded the boats up and we steamed east and got to Virgin Gorda and Bitter End. I think I know we were the first folks to arrive with relief supplies. And it was, you know, it was a devastating sight, but this is us getting off the boats and greeting. We had 7 or 8 team members who went through the storm on the property, and they were thankfully all safe and unharmed, but obviously the property was totally.
And they weren't expecting us to show up.
They had no idea. There were no communications. They had no idea when people were going to show up.
So Richard, what did you think when you arrived to this?
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, I kind of knew what I was going to see. I knew what we were going to see. And I had really made up my mind that this was not going to be a catastrophe. It was going to be an opportunity to take Bitter End, which, you know, was close to 50 years old at the time, and in a sense, take what we'd learned for all those years and try to do it better, and to be more sensitive to Mother Nature, because she certainly gave us a strong kick in the butt. So I think she taught us a lesson. And and so we started almost immediately planning for what we're calling Bitter End 2.0. And it was basically, how can we use this wonderful place that Mother Nature has created? How can we put it to better, more efficient use, and be less intrusive than we might have been before, and a number of other considerations like that.
Lauren, there was a huge outpouring. I know you guys reached out on social media and stuff, and you have a huge community of people that love the Bitter End, and like I said, the residents of Virgin Gorda. And there was a lot of support that came to the islands early on, thanks to you guys.
I think there's a picture of my brother helping convey some, So we, almost immediately after the storm hit, we launched a fundraising philanthropic program, and that's actually morphed into something a little bit more formalized, called the Bitter End Foundation. And so since the storm, we've raised over $1 million, and we have put a lot of that money to work, most of that money to work, for causes in the BVI. A lot of it's disaster relief. We're supporting programming in environmental stewardship, in educational initiatives, in professional training and development. We've also supported causes in Puerto Rico. They're an amazing friend to the BVI. But it's really been an awesome sort of affirmation of how much the place means to so many people. And we actually launched an e-commerce business, an apparel and gear company, and the philanthropic work is a core part of the business model for Bitter End Provisions.
So this is the question. I'm watching the chat room and the Q&A, and this is the question: is like, when can we go down? What's going on? So this is the part that we all came to see: is what is going on, Richard? What's the plan?
Well, the plan is basically to start where we started 50 years ago, as a yachtsman's hangout, and to put in, have a great bar, marina, restaurant, and really, like I said, start from scratch all over again, do the same thing. We think it's the right thing to do, and to be, create another place for the broader community, including visiting yachtsmen and tourists, but also including the local community, to have a go-to place.
So these aerial shots after the hurricane, where things are cleaned up, I'm sure a bit, but the vegetation, the mangroves, the whole waterfront's changed. You started with a clean slate.
Yeah, we're going. That's part of the whole project, and one of the main things we've done is to try to let Mother Nature manage the shoreline, and get away from hardscape or bulkheading and all that stuff. So we now have quite a bit more beach than we ever had. And we're trying to be very efficient in our land use, so that we're not creating a sprawl in this beautiful place. And also, Lauren can speak to this lumber yard that we have established.
Our little Home Depot. Yeah, so we had to take down, we demoed like 70 plus.
Well, we didn't demo, we dismantled.
We dismantled, yeah. Irma demoed them for us. So, you know, I think Bitter End's architecture has always been kind of iconic, and we wanted to salvage as much material as we could, so that when we rebuilt the place, there would be echoes of the past. And also it's an environmentally we thought, why waste this great timber? So we've got several tens of thousands of board feet of large format timbers. We were able to salvage pavers. We took our, the foundation, the concrete foundations, and crushed the material. We used that for fill. In the village. So we've really tried to upcycle and recycle as much material as possible. And so you're looking down at the lumberyard, and we've got a kind of unique model. So we've got about 65 team members of the construction project that are living on site. So we built a camp, and yeah, we're running a really efficient and program. This is the vertical construction that's happening literally as we speak. I think this is the one part of the restaurant, the dining room. So this is the main village that we're focused on developing right now. I think there are a few more shots, Pedro. Yep. So we're everything's being built at about 2 meters above sea level to make sure that we're protected from future storms. It also makes the view awesome. This is our new marina building. It's the quarter deck, and we're going to have for all of our cruising friends. You're going to be excited to know that we're going to have 8 bathrooms with showers, and we're also going to have a really beautiful private lounge for our marina guests upstairs. It'll have fantastic views of the harbor and sunset.
But like your dad said, there's no more riprap along the waterfront. I mean, you could walk with your kids along the beach there and look for the blowfish, pufferfish.
Yep. Yeah, we actually have basically like what we're calling a town beach right now, which is from this building north up to our main concrete dock. And so we've let the sand has come back, and it's like it's going to be a really nice place to hang out and swim. This is the upstairs of our quarterdeck club. And then this is a view of the village. So we will have, when we reopen, a couple of, we'll have the Reef Teak store. We'll have a market with food and wine. And
so we're getting rid of the pigeons.
So you think
yellow birds will be left.
Yeah, we're replacing with banana quits.
We're going to have, there's a tented building that you can see sort of down towards the south end of this image. So the Sand Palace movie theater was a place that meant a lot to me, certainly as a kid and an adult, and to a lot of people. So we've recreated that in the form of an open air tented theater / kids club area that can be used for all kinds of gatherings. And then a restaurant that's going to be part pub, part open kitchen pizza restaurant, and then with a sit down, a seated area. And then there's this whole sort of plaza, which is meant to be like the hangout, the center, the heartbeat of the village. And it's going to have a beautiful view. It's up again 2 meters. There's a really cool seawall that is the western edge of the plaza, and the seawall is constructed entirely of big boulders that we brought from around the property. We didn't bring anything from off-site, so we really made a conscious effort to use indigenous material stuff on site. So this is our dining, the sort of, I don't want to call it formal, but the sit down,
analog to the clubhouse dining room.
Yeah. Right. Tell me about the Burgies. What happened to the Burgies? The famous Bitter End Yacht Club Burgie collection.
That's where everybody gets to be a part of this.
Well, we're going to start. Oh, that's one of the that we're hitting the restart button on that, and we've got to get. We're looking for participants.
Please send us your Burgies. So this is the Sand Palace Theater and Kids Club. It's going to be really neat.
Yeah, no pigeons.
You can't bring your chocolate lab though. Much as we love dogs. And then this is the water sports shack, so it's a little bit of an upgrade, but it'll have a couple of bathrooms and an outdoor shower, and you can close it up when it's raining, but it's right there on the beach, and we'll have our awesome club fleet of all kinds of fun toys, Hobies and paddle boards and TBD keel boats and whatever Pedro
boiling cameras, right?
Yep.
It's basically in the same geographic location that the water sports area was before.
Right. And here you can see the bulkheading and how the beach is out front and everything's built up a little bit, but it's a cool feel, isn't it?
Yeah, we're trying to keep it, tight so that it has, there's body heat and it has a heartbeat, and it feels like a real village. So.
Love it. So the $1 million question, it's time. When do we get to go back?
So we're targeting the end of this year. So knock on wood. Yeah, that's our plan. And
at the bitter end.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow. And will you be only like visiting yachtsmen? You come with your charter boat. That's the easy one. What about rooms?
No, so we'll have a couple of hotel accommodations in the beginning, and then we're going to add several more in the first half of 2021. So, but we'll have a handful of hotel accommodations on day one, and they're going to be cool. They're going to be a little different, and I guess, well, you can't. Unfortunately, none of us can go there and visit right now, but if you do want to kind of get a little bit of bitter end to take with you this summer on your nautical adventures or shoreside fun, we do have we launched an e-commerce concept last year called bitterendprovisions.com. We've got gear and apparel and a lot of cool content, and we're also doing a lot of this philanthropic work. In fact, this summer we're going to be sponsoring a number of programs to get kids involved in or excited about the marine industry and sailing through Learn to Sail and Learn to Scuba Dive programs. So we'd love to have people support that work. And I think this slide kind of says it all.
Yeah. Thank you for the ASA love there. Appreciate it. And, your team does a great job on social media, so we can stay attuned on Facebook and everywhere else, the latest news, and watch how that construction crew gets things done on time.
And that's my big...
As long as the chickens keep laying eggs. All right. So I wanted to, we do want to take a few questions here. So we're going to come back on full screen, and I'm going to take a look at what you guys came up with here. Here's one. How do you get there if you're not on a charter boat?
So there's a couple different ways to get there. You can fly if you're coming from the US, you can fly into St. Thomas or Puerto Rico. And then if you're flying into St. Thomas, you can get on a little smaller plane and fly to Virgin Gorda or Tortola. If you're coming from Puerto Rico, you can also fly on a smaller plane. You can also take a ferry from St. Thomas to Virgin Gorda. It's a bit of an adventure, but it's fun, And
maybe by the time we get going, there'll be seaplane service from St. Thomas again, and there's always friends at the Caribbean Buzz.
Yeah, there's a great, there's a fantastic helicopter service that operates out of St. Thomas that gave us that footage, and they're they're great.
I'm scrolling through the questions, and a bunch of people just share their memories of like, we did this, we came first in 1988 and X and Y. There's a few of them that talk about being married down there. That makes me realize, have you ever counted how many people have been married at the Bitter End?
Oh my God, a lot.
Yeah, we don't know.
And it actually, like, people renew their vows all the time too, which is really sweet. I don't know the number, but there are a lot of people who've gotten married and engaged.
We want to get them all back. We're gonna have, that we want everybody to come back, and we'll have a big anniversary party or something like that.
Well, and you have
bring their kids.
Yeah, there's some questions here. You have some super millionaire neighbors on nearby islands, including your relatively long-time neighbor, another Mr. Branson, Sir Branson, and some other folks. I saw some cool pictures of former President Obama learning to kiteboard nearby the Bitter End. But there's a question here: so what sort of celebrity sightings have you had in the past?
We never talk about our celebrities.
Not only that, I probably wouldn't recognize them. So.
Right.
No, that's not true, Dad. Well, first, let me just caveat this by saying that I think one of the great things about the BVI is a lot of celebrities come because they feel really safe and they don't get bothered by the paparazzi and et cetera, et cetera. But
and besides, they get treated just like
the
same hospitality everybody else gets.
But there have been, I had the, when I was in college, I had the great pleasure of helping Joan Rivers and her daughter pick out bathing suits. That was a lot of fun. She was a real character. We've had Mel Gibson has gone sailing on our catamaran Miranda for the day.
I'm still sticking with this story that I heard that he threw his kids in the shark tank. So he could.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a rite of passage. My brother and myself and my siblings and our friends did that a lot. And then, the BVI is a real hotspot for Sports Illustrated swimsuit issues for a lot of obvious reasons. So, we had the pleasure of hosting Heidi Klum for, I don't know, it's got to be like 10 or 15 years ago for a shoot.
We've had 2 swimsuit issues.
Yeah. And I won't name names, but there were definitely a couple people on our team who were pretty excited that Heidi was around. So, yeah. But in general, it's really like a place where everybody can kind of keep a low profile and have a good time without being
basically low key.
Yeah, low key, but lots of energy. You basically get going from the moment you wake up until whenever it is you decide to hang it up for the night. There's lots of stuff to do, and that's the greatest thing. And as I think through my memories, and I'm sure you guys, having Lauren, you growing up there, and Richard, you seeing it over almost 50 years. I mean, it's such a special place on the planet, and we're all so thankful that you guys have continued to, let us come down there and kept it real and not developed it like some other places that have been developed down in the Caribbean, and really excited to see the V 2.0, and it must be real tough, not only building back up from those terrifying or devastating photos to now what you must be going through with COVID-19 and keeping the construction crew going and everything, but we wish you the very best of luck. So if we're lucky by the end of the year, come in. If we're sailing around in the fall, can we come and grab a mooring?
You better believe it. And we can't wait to have all you guys who you and everybody else who's watching this back there.
It's more fun to share a place that you love with lots of people who get it too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. And Richard and Lauren, thank you so much for sharing your love and what's going to happen, your vision of the future for the Bitter End, and we're all, I know, right on board with you. So wish you the best of luck. Have a great summer. This is one of the last few days of springtime, if you count springtime.
Happy solstice.
Solstice.
Yeah.
Okay, just keep messing about in boats, guys.
All right. Thanks so much. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, everybody. That's our show for tonight. I'm so glad you got a chance to go down to the islands with me and my good friends, the Hokins, and get a little vision of the Bitter End past just before the hurricane and the vision of the future. But, you know, the best part of the Bitter End, of course, is the wind and the water and the waves and the shoreline and just the beautiful geography of the Virgin Gorda, which is so unique. And that's all still right there. So I can't wait to go back down as soon as we can get on an airplane. On behalf of the American Sailing Association and Harkin, our sponsor, thanks a lot, guys, from Pewaukee Lake. I'd like to say thank you for very, very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Sailing. We're around, and please stay in touch with the ASA, getting back out on the water soon. It's good to see things loosening up soon. Until next time, please stay safe, stay happy, and think about your happy spot like the Bitter End. We'll see you next time. Bye.